goals. I'm not able to go on January 25th, but I will be there in March. But I just thought I would invite the rest of you. Considering this is the first board meeting of the year, I just wanted to think back a little bit about some things that have happened this year, and some things I'm proud of. And I also wanted to share with you, you know, every year I choose a word, and it kind of keeps me focused on things that are important. And this year my word is spirit, because I think a lot of times we get, close your ears, Micah, we get hung up on policy and procedures and we forget the spirit of those policies and procedures. Sometimes you can open them now. But I think our spirit is in line with our constitutional responsibility to develop the full educational potential of each person. And I think that is the spirit that we have to keep in mind. A lot of questions were, you know, hey, what's the top thing up here that we have to base our decisions on? Well, guess what? It's developing the full potential of each person, educational potential. But, you know, a lot of things have happened this year, personally, professionally, to me, and I know they happened to you also. And I think we have to keep this in mind when we talk with each other, is we don't know what everybody's going through. And we need to, use some kindness in dealing with people and keep the spirit of education going. I think we have a strong board right now. We have a diverse board, a lot of different ideas, and I'm glad people feel comfortable discussing things, and I hope that continues. And the other thing is, one of the main reasons why I chose spirit as my word, is because I believe that we have to develop the full educational potential of each person in the spirit of their future, not ours, because we're not going to be here forever, but the spirit of our students' futures. So thank you for all that you do, and I look forward to working hard again this year. Okay, so happy 2023. First up, or next up on the agenda, are student reports. And from Kalispell Middle School, Riley, welcome. Riley Bigelow.
My name's Riley Bigelow, and I'm an 8th grader at KMS. Mr. Johnson asked me to tell you guys what's going on at KMS. So this week, girls basketball just started for our 7th and 8th grade girls. We usually have about 5 to 6 teams for each grade level. We once again had a very successful food drive at KMS during the week of December 7th. We had over 4,355 food items collected, and the rest of our food went to the Lions food drive. So the Tuesday before break, KMS hosted our annual holiday fiesta dinner. The purpose of the holiday dinner is to provide all students at KMS a complimentary holiday dinner to share as a community. This just came back this year from COVID. And what's going on tonight is the 16th annual KMS talent show. And just prior to Christmas break, we had our holiday concert, and it was for 6th grade band and orchestra. It was their first concert, and the KMS musical tryouts were completed before break, and the performance for our musical will be in March 9th, 10th, and 11th. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Riley. Any questions or comments?
question.
Yeah.
You said the date for the musical. What is the musical this year?
I'm not sure. I want to say, what is it? The Lion King. I'm like,
Thank you.
Next up is Flathead High School, but there's no speakers, is that right, Michelle?
Right, because I'm doing the.
You're gonna, we'll hear from you later.
Yep.
Next, Glacier High School, Maddie Davis.
Hi, my name is Maddie Davis. I'm a junior at Glacier High School. I'm a member of the student council and I also participate in volleyball, tennis, and National Honor Society, among some other activities. As a member of student council, we are quite busy during the holiday season, giving back to our community, and we try to provide as many opportunities as possible for our students to help give back. This year we ran a food drive to the local food bank and held a penny wars competition. The penny wars competition just ran throughout the school, and students were asked to just kind of contribute loose change, quarters, pennies, nickels, dollars if they have them, into just these little containers, and then we counted each grade, and the winning grade got bragging rights, of course. The money went towards the Nature Foundation, a mental health and suicide prevention organization that is quite active in our community and plays a large role in our students' mental health. In addition to the food drive, we also ran, as usual, our two biggest holiday events, the Adopted Family Program and the Giving Tree. This year, we did something a little different with our Adopted Family Program. Usually, we would work with the counselors to provide two families with gifts, clothing, and food to make a holiday meal. But this year, instead of just working with two families, we worked with our counselors to give gifts, clothing, and food to 9 students instead. So I think it broke down to about 3 students per grade. And the students received anything from socks to Nintendo Switches to some students received Beats headphones and a Keurig coffee maker. So some pretty sweet gifts. As for the Giving Tree, we set a goal to provide 300 gifts to the Salvation Army. We did meet that goal, and it was quite a success. Something new this year as well was our student council worked with DECA, a business financial organization, to help promote and market the Giving Tree. So it went really, really well. I think we ended up turning almost 290 of our 300 gifts, which is great when you're working with teenagers who usually forget their deadlines and don't bring in their toys. So the DECA students did a great job marketing and really pushing that event to make it successful for our student body. Finally, our sports teams and other activities have also kept super busy. The swim team had a great start to the season with several swim meets already underway, while the wrestling teams just swept Hellgate. Our basketball teams also had a fiery start to the season as our girls teams took a win over Butte and our boys teams took a big win over Sentinel. Last but not least, this weekend our speech teams won 11 events this past weekend at Gonzaga, setting School District 5 and Glacier records, which is pretty exciting. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to seeing you guys in the pack. Any questions?
So that DECA group,
mm-hmm.
is that like an internal Glacier High group, or is it an external group?
Yeah, absolutely. So DECA is a national program. They compete at the state and national level. It's just kind of like a business marketing program. So we worked with the students to help market the event, and it runs statewide and nationally. Thank you.
Thank you, Maddie. Next up is our building update for Hedges Elementary. Welcome, Brent.
Thank you. Oh. I don't know, I don't want to stand behind the podium anyway.
All right, for those of you who don't know, I'm Brent Finkelman, principal at Hedges, and I wanted to talk to you guys today about some things going on at Hedges and try to tie it to some of the board kind of focus areas and kind of our school-based action plan as well, and just kind of show you guys some of that.
Sorry, Brad, you just go.
No, that's all right.
Brad, just tell me, it's a PDF that scroll through, so just tell me when you want me to head out.
Right. All right. So one of the things coming back from COVID, I think we had a lot of things that kind of had to go away because of procedures and protocols. And some of that is just really getting the families and the people into the schools and the fun, you know, events and kind of mass gatherings that we did, which is kind of the spirit of the school. We lost that for a little while, I think, around the schools. Not any fault of the school necessarily, but just one of the things we really wanted to focus on getting back. So one of the things I want to talk to you guys about is just some of the different offerings and things we have. We actually added 2 more events last night at our PTO meeting, which is awesome. But at the beginning of the year, we really wanted to engage the parents and start getting them back into the school because we kind of missed that piece to work with them. So we had our typical meet and greet, drop off supplies, kind of meet your teacher and all that kind of stuff, open house, which we have every year. And some years we've done like the meet and greet, drop supplies. Other years we've kind of done like an open house presentation a few weeks into the year to talk about what to expect and what learning is going to happen. We did both this year. I did not make the teachers stay late twice. That would be 1, kind of against their contract, and 2, not the best way to start your school year, right? So the first one was during contract time from 2 to 4 on August 30th. That was during that contract time. We already had the teachers. I gave them that time to meet the parents, engage the parents, welcome them back into the school, new families, a lot of out-of-state people moving here. So it was a great opportunity for them to tour the school, see their teachers and all that, and kind of put them at ease before they trust their 5-year-olds with these teachers that they've never met before, right? And then we waited till September 29th, where each grade level teacher kind of put together like a 30-minute slideshow of just things to expect throughout the year, different protocols and routines they have, go over the different curriculum stuff. You know, here's when I'm setting on spelling words, here's some of the math things we're going to be doing, here's some of the fun activities we're going to be doing. And then I also did a whole school presentation just on different rules, procedures, and safety protocols and things like that, just for families that would want it. It was also my way to culminate the night in the gym and bring all the parents in with me, so my teachers could sneak out the back door, because whenever you have those family nights, they always have those families that linger and linger and linger, and you have to work the next day. So I wanted to give my teachers a chance to sneak out and get home. So I stayed late with all the parents in the gym and made my presentation with them, and really answered a lot of great questions to some new families that we hadn't had before, or families that had been there but just had, you know, different questions and things. So those were, I think, both a good hit. Had different positive feedback on those. We had our annual fall festival, which is a PTO-sponsored event, and that was awesome. We hadn't been able to have that for 2 years, but we had quite a few people show up for that. In fact, we just talked at our PTO meeting about needing more opportunities and activities and games because the line fell a bit long for some of the carnival games and stuff. But we had lots of parent volunteers, which is awesome to get those parents in and get them to be part of the school. And Flathead High School volunteers. We had quite a few. I want to say we had about 30 Flathead High School volunteers. I fed them free pizza, and they all showed up, which was cool. We've been doing a lot of pairings with Flathead High School this year. We can talk more about that later. We also had our ornament night, December 8th, and that was like record turnout. We have multiple teachers that put on different ornaments. We buy all the supplies for the ornaments, invite the families in, and they kind of rotate around the different classrooms, and they could build different ornaments, and then take those ornaments back home to their houses. Again, we had food and bake sale items and things, and kind of a fundraiser along the way for Special Olympics, so it's kind of an awesome opportunity there. We have our skating party coming up in February. I think we're going to do it on President's Day. We have to kind of do it when the ice rink is available based on the hockey schedule, but right now it looks like we're scheduling for President's Day. And then we have our ice cream social at the end of the year where we scoop free ice cream and just have the parents come meet, let the kids play on the playground, just mingle with each other. And then we also added, we're gonna do fun run, school fun run as our fundraiser this year. So I have to put in, get permission from you guys, but that's kind of our plan right now. And we're gonna do that, I wanna say in May, I wanna say like May 9th off the top of my head. And then we also added just kind of a family dance night in March that we're gonna do. Our goal when our calendar committee met at the beginning of the year was we wanted to provide more opportunities to engage the families. So we ended up trying to schedule 2 or 3 events to get the families into the school each trimester. So we're engaging them all throughout the year, but we wanted to front load with a lot at the beginning of the year. On top of that, we have lots of different musical performances and things that I kind of put up there. We did a few before holiday break. We have a couple coming up in May. We have Flathead High School Learn and Serve buddies, 4 days a week to come to Hedges. They're not coming on early out because our schedules just don't align on those days. Some of you even have kids that come and enjoy that program, and that's awesome. So we have one class with Wendy Putzler that comes over and works with our first grade classrooms this year, and they really partner up to help some of those kids. And I think it's a benefit for the the high school and the younger kids. So they help them with reading, they help them with math, they help them with writing sometimes. Some of our students have actually gone to the high school buddies athletic events, and some of our high school buddies have actually shown up to like the little guy flag football games, Rotary basketball games. So it's been awesome to see those pairings with the community as well. Their last day with their Learn to Serve buddies will be Friday, and they'll kind of say their goodbyes, but we get a whole new wave of Learn to Serve buddies next semester, and we actually have 2 classes coming over next semester, so we'll be working with first and second grade. So awesome opportunity for high school, and our kids. On top of that, with transformational learning and a lot of what we're doing and the help, Chow Young was hired, as you guys know, in a new position, and she has been awesome so far. I mean, she is out there making community connections, finding resources, finding experiences, aligning dates, emailing our staff. So she's done an awesome job already. But our field trips used to be, due to funding, each class or grade level would get 2 bus field trips per year, because that's about what we could provide or afford. And we would kind of predetermine what those experiences or field trips were, so they wouldn't all just want to go to Glacier Park and do the same experience every time. We want to give them a variety of experiences. With this new idea and opportunity, they have just a ton of variety of experiences. I mean, we already have a spreadsheet, I think, with like 50 to 80 experiences they can do, all around the community. The transportation is being covered, which is awesome for us. We can spend the dollars on different things for the kids, or help some of the less fortunate kids if there's a different cost associated with those. And then it's also provided a lot of volunteer opportunities, again, for our parents and our families and community members to come be part of the school. So some of those volunteers can come go to some of those experiences with them. We're getting them out in the community, meeting with the different businesses, meeting with the different people. So it's been awesome to see that. So there's a variety of opportunities for chaperones, for volunteers at our school. We also have our 4th grade cribbage each week now, which is awesome to have back. We have 5 to 8 volunteers that are showing up each week in our 4th grade classrooms with cribbage groups and doing that. But with our experiences, and one of the things we're actually going to do in our work on Monday, Martin Luther King Day, we have a full day of PD, no students, but all of our staff, is we're going to be working a little bit more with these experiences and classroom extensions that they're going to do, is we're making it more towards the intended curriculum. So we're going to be not just go on a trip to go on the trip, but how does it connect to what you're doing in the classroom? How does it tie into what they've been learning about in the classroom, and tying it more towards curriculum? So it kind of opened the floodgates to get them out there and get these opportunities again, and they are still justifying to us, how is this educational? How am I doing this stuff? But we're going to make it more intentional and teach them more about that as we start to progress and start working through some of the priority standards as well. So more to come on that stuff. Academically, we started looking at different goals for the school, and we really tried to focus our academic goals this year more on growth than proficiency. And I think we're still worried about the proficiency. We're still looking at proficiency by all means. But one of the things we realized is that in the last few years, really looking at how many kids are proficient at this skill, and how many kids are proficient at this skill, and what do we do with those kids that aren't proficient at this skill. But what we haven't really tracked, and I think transformational learning has really helped with this, is looking at all that individual growth. So we really wanted to focus more on the growth of every single student this year than just our proficiency and who is making that proficiency. Because you can have a student that might be a tier 3 student or a struggling reader who makes more growth than a kid who's already a higher level reader. And we want to celebrate that growth for that kid. But at the end of the year, he still might not be proficient for what that grade level standard is. But he might have made double the growth of another student. And so we really wanted to focus our goals more on growth. So our school SOS team met. We came up with a K-5 reading goal, and it's increased reading fluency for all students across K-5 grade levels by 50 SGP or more, their student growth percentage. So the reason we kind of came up with 50 is we looked at our past data and looked at what a lot of students would achieve for growth. And we also dug into, and this is based on our Ames web testing that we use K-8 as our benchmark testing. So we give that Ames web testing in September, January, and May. So we actually just started doing our second round of testing yesterday. The next 2 weeks are kind of our testing weeks. But we looked at what their typical growth would be for our students in the past. And then we also have worked with and dug into Ames web And they say that if a student's not making at least 50 SGP on a given year, that they're not going to be able to make adequate growth to reach proficiency or catch up to their peers or make adequate growth for what a grade level should see. So we really focused on that 50 number to increase reading fluency for all students. That does not mean that all students are going to be proficient at that grade level, but we are looking for proficiency growth with every student in our school. And that's even with our most struggling readers. And that's kind of our goal we're trying to tackle with that. For 2nd through 5th grade, we added an extra reading goal. So not only do we want them to become fluent readers, but we also want them to understand what they're reading, right? And there's this change from K1, 2, and especially K1, they're really learning to read. So you're teaching them how to decode words, you're teaching them how to sound out words, look for context clues, all those things. They're learning to read in K1, kind of K1, 2, but by 2nd through 5th, or 3rd through 5th especially, they start switching from learning to read to reading to learn. And that's when you really start diving into some of those other science and social studies and curricular areas. But we want our students to not only be okay with their fluency and make good growth with their fluency, but we want 90% of our students to be at or above the 40th percentile on Ames Web reading comprehension by the end of their 5th grade year. So when they leave Hedges, are they comprehending at least 9% of our students at the 40th percentile? Now, benchmark for that Ames Web test is actually just 26th percentile. So if they're at the 26th percentile, they are considered benchmark or able to be at their grade. What we have found out as a district, a K-5 district, as we've dug into all the data, is if students are at that 26th to like 39th percentile, although they're saying they're benchmark, they're kind of just of that bubble kid. They're kind of wavering. They're doing okay, but we want them to just be stronger than that. And those students still kind of struggle on tests like the SBAC or when you get into ACTs and things like that. So we thought, let's reach for that 40th percentile and just make sure they're all solid on that comprehension as well. Same with math. We went with the math number fluency goal. And then we wanted to put an SEL goal in there as well. So this year we are working on 9 character traits. We do 1 character trait per month. And we have a leadership team that does an assembly at the beginning of each month, along with some of our staff members and leadership teachers. And they've introduced the character trait for the month that the kids are going to work on. And then we also announce kind of who the winners or the students that showed the character trait from the previous month the best. They get what we call a brag tag. So all of our students at the beginning of the year this year, we ordered what you guys would probably call dog tag, little chain with little dog tags on them. They all have one that says Hedges or has their name on it. But then all throughout our school this year, we have thousands of these dog tags that we've ordered, and we can just put whatever we want on there as prizes. So if they're a recess leader, they earn a brag tag that they put on their little necklace to show that they're a recess leader. If they master their multiplication facts, they're a multiplication brag tag that they get. If they're the character trait winner from their class for responsibility, they get a responsibility brag tag. If they're the character trait winner for safety, they get a safety brag tag. So we're working on our character traits and just our positive reinforcements and positive behaviors for the school. And so we just have an SEL goal that all of our classes are going to focus on those 9 character traits and just our overall positive gotcha card tickets that we give out in all of our behavior systems throughout the year as well, and really participate in that and embody that as a school. Next step, we kind of wanted to talk about what are we doing with these early releases in this time, and what does that look like as how does that tie into our plan? So one of the Wednesdays or weeks, we actually dedicate to our Hedges all staff meeting. Most of our staff meetings in the past were just for certified people. We did not have staff meetings with classified people because we didn't pay them to stay and be part of the staff meetings. It's been really nice to have our classified staff. We oftentimes have to try to find other times in their day to schedule and meet on little topics and things we couldn't cover with them. So we're able to have an all-staff meeting, certified and classified, which has been great for communication and protocols and procedures and just overall growth with the school. I start every staff meeting with staff recognitions and celebrations. So I let them do shout-outs to each other, awards to each other, celebrate each other's recognitions. Somebody got their doctorate degree, we're going to celebrate that. Somebody just finished their master's, we're going to celebrate that. Somebody made the newspaper, we're going to celebrate that. So they all celebrate each other and do shout outs, and sometimes they give them coffee cards. Sometimes it's just a funny little print-off Google award that they just love and hang up. Sometimes it's like a fun trophy they pass around the school and they take turns earning. We go over announcements and updates. We have PD on different topics and things, and then we do a Q&A just to clarify processes and make sure the whole school's on the same page. That's been awesome. Another week, we work on our elementary PD wheel. I think you guys have been presented to and kind of know about the PD wheel. So all K-5 staff from all 6 schools are going to Rankin. They have the best parking and they have AC. We all go to Rankin and we rotate around and they get to pick different professional development classes that tie into their own goals or their own professional growth. And that's been awesome for us. Each staff member signs up for 2-hour-long PD sessions of topics of interest or growth areas. And it's helping us grow our own teacher leaders. Our teachers are the ones providing that PD. I mean, our administrators, our instructional coaches, our teachers, but we're growing our own leaders, our district staff, and then they have their own peers presenting these ideas and showing them how they implement in their own rooms. Because oftentimes you might go to some big national conference, like, well, they do that in Chicago, but how do I do that in Montana? The plus side of this is it's their own peers doing it and showing them and teaching them along the way. And then they'll come to you, can I go observe that teacher? I went to this class at Peterson, and they did this thing in 2nd grade. I want to go watch her do that in action. Absolutely. Let's get your coverage, go observe, let's go do that. So it's opened a lot of doors and been a great thing for us as well. That's another one of our Wednesdays. 3rd Wednesday of every month is their day. We give them that day. They can work on whatever they want. We don't steal that time. We aren't doing meetings. That's something we agreed with the union. K-12, the 3rd Wednesday every month is their Wednesday. So they oftentimes are in each other's room collaborating anyway, asking and sharing ideas. They use it for extra prep time, for prepping different classes, assignments. They use it for time to communicate with families. I oftentimes see teachers actually inviting parents in that they don't get to talk to as much, or having meetings with some of them on their own, grades, assessments, all that kind of stuff. And then they use it for planning with some of our parents and specialist teachers that they don't get to meet with as often because they have such busy schedules back-to-back-to-back classes. So that's been awesome. And then the 4th, early out of each month is when we kind of do some whole school PD, and that can look very different. Sometimes it's certified and classified combined, sometimes it's just grade level stuff, sometimes it's specialist groups. So that varies greatly. We actually started off by just jumping into standards, and we were going to start doing some of the priority standards things that we talked about. And I think a lot of the schools started that, and then as we as admin started diving into that, we realized that we needed a better system and process for how that was going to look, and make sure that as a district we're doing it in a unified way as well, so that a kid that's going to each school will have some of the same priority standards or some of the same topics they're learning at the right time. So we kind of backed off on that a little bit, and that's some of the work that we're doing as a whole admin team, and actually some of the work that we're doing Monday for our Martin Luther King Day presentation that we're working on them with. So we took a step back from that. We actually started refining a little bit of the PLC process and jumping back into what does a good PLC look like. We've had enough staff turnover, I think, over the last 4 or 5 years that now we need to just go back to the basics and refine that PLC process and make sure everybody's doing their part in the PLC. We're truly looking at data and how to support kids. And so one of the things that came up at a lot of the schools, and just being one of them, is sometimes it's hard to have a PLC if you only have 2 teachers at a grade level. And so it's just 2 heads are better than 1, but there's not always as many brains to bounce those ideas off of. There's not always as many people to share those ideas or implement those things, student side. And there's still a disconnect from some of the other schools and things. So we kind of talked as principals, and we thought it would be nice to do like one Wednesday a month, start doing PLCs with our partner schools. As you guys know, with enrollment, we kind of have partner schools now. So Elrod, Peterson, Russell, and Edgerton, and Hedges and Rankin are partner schools. So we're going to start doing some PLCs with our partner school, where we start diving into these priority standards and common assessments. And 2 people is not quite enough for the best PLC, but if you also bring all the kindergarten teachers into one room to try to do it, 16 people is hard to move the dial along as well and get anywhere with. Lots of discussion and not at a great pace. So we kind of felt like 5 to 6 people is about the right size for PLC. So the partner schools work perfect with that. You know, if Rankin has anywhere from 2 to 4 of each grade level, and Hedges has anywhere from 2 to 3. It'll pair those sizes pretty well, and we share a lot of kids back and forth, so that'll help us out a lot as well. Okay, Ursula.
I understand from like what you're saying, but what is PLC?
PLC is what we call professional learning community, and it's
Professional
perfect time for
learning,
questions, because that was it anyway.
Okay.
So our professional learning community is elementary-wise, we meet once a week in grade level teams. That's what we do. Middle school, high school, they actually meet, I think, more frequently. They have their teaming period and their planning period, but elementary, we do once a week for PLCs. And it'll be nice for us, we'll still have our hedges PLCs once a week, but now we'll be able to do a partner PLC where we're really diving into those priority standards with ranking like once a month is kind of. Questions on you guys? I wanted to focus tonight's presentation on kind of our board focus areas, and so that's kind of why I'm gonna be short and sweet, but give you guys what you're looking for. Ursula?
You had talked about the one place where things have kind of changed. Is this a lot different from what Wednesdays like last year looked like?
I would say last year we gave them a lot more time. I mean, they had a lot more opportunities those Wednesdays to do remote learning, plan lessons for kids that are gone, kids that are on quarantine. So we weren't able to do as many meetings and do as much professional development last year.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I kind of heard from the community was like, well, what are people going to do with these Wednesdays? So that's
Yeah.
great. It's
And
great to see what they're doing.
there's been Wednesdays that we really work with the teachers too. So like the Wednesday right before report cards went out, I gave teachers that Wednesday to get their grades in, work on their grades and assessments. The Wednesday that happened the week of parent-teacher conferences, they have Thursday scheduled for parent-teacher conferences, they have that Monday off after Halloween or whatever. I gave them that Wednesday as an extra opportunity for parents. So there are those Wednesdays we're giving them that time as well, and just honoring the work that they're doing and their time, and they're loving that. So, yeah. Other questions?
Yeah, to focus on percentile growth versus proficiency, do you run into problems with students who start relatively proficient because there isn't 50% up to go, or are you not running into that?
I'm not sure I understand your question. So you're saying like
You
those
said
higher
you were-
kids that start out as proficient?
Right, you said that you were looking at growth, and you wanted them to grow 50 points, and I'm saying if you start closer to the top, there may not be as much space for that 50 points.
Is it harder for them to grow, is that what you're saying?
Or is it harder for you to form a rubric or a metric for it?
Well, not necessarily. As you look at where they test, so, and this is part of, like, one of the sheets that we didn't click on the link, and I don't want to go back to it now, that we're working through is, even though that kid might test at, say, the 99th percentile in reading comprehension, they can still make 50 growth points in that same sub-test by January. So they can still make that growth. A lot of times, yes, we struggle at times to grow our higher kids like that, because we are focusing so much on interventions and working hard to meet all the lower kids, that it is harder sometimes to challenge those higher kids or give them good independent work at the elementary level that is meaningful and at their level when you're, working with so many of these lower kids. So that is an area that we struggle with more, yes, but that is also why we're trying to focus on growth and not just percentiles. So you look at those high achieving kids, they're always gonna stay at benchmark, right? So what are we doing to grow our highest kids and grow our lowest kids and still get that same year's worth of growth? So if they come into us at a 6th grade reading level, we want them to leave at a 7th grade reading level, right? So we are still reaching for that growth with our highest kids too, and that's one of the reasons why we're working on the growth and not just their percentile. Proficiency, sorry.
Yeah, very cool.
Great question though. Lane.
Brent, I always appreciate hearing from you. It's exciting at Hedges. Just to follow up, at some point I thought in the fall, there was a talk about an adaptive playground.
Yes.
And can you kind of fill us in about where that is?
Yeah, so the adaptive playground showed up. It was supposed to be delivered, no later than August 1st. I think it showed up around September 8th. So as you can imagine, grounds and custodial, that makes that challenging. We did get the little revvy wheel, kind of merry-go-round spinner that is installed, it's on the playground. We also got a kettle drum that is installed, it's on the playground. And then we got this big spiderweb climber post. Because it was delivered late in our maintenance and grounds beginning of the year, trying to get lawn mowing, sprinklers, blowing, all that stuff, they did not get that installed before the snow hit. So that part did not happen yet. You guys approved us, I want to say, over the summertime for the adaptive flooring and all that that's happening. It's actually gonna be kind of like an artificial turf is what they're recommending from Dakota Playground, not the, special flooring that kind of stakes down that you see at the cities and stuff. They said for Montana weather and snow, they actually recommend the turf. So I've been in touch with Jason, Harris, I think is his name, from Dakota Playground. And they've been going back and forth, because the original quote when we ordered the first playground equipment, the adaptive playground, that quote didn't include any flooring. We paid for that out of Hedges budget. That wasn't the, interlocal agreement stuff you guys approved. So that stuff was all here, not yet installed. But they originally quoted us on, I believe it was $25 a square foot when we ordered all that playground stuff. Well, by the end of the summertime, that price had already taken off with the number. But I've been in contact with them, and we're hoping to still get that here and installed in the spring once the weather clears up, but we still have plans for that. So flooring is coming, it's just been delayed.
What's there, been used well?
Yeah, I think there's the Revy wheel spinner has been used. A lot of our special needs kids love it because they can sit on there and spin it themselves or ask for a spin. One of our teachers closest to the room with the kettle drum did not love the kettle drum for the first 3 or 4 days, and it was heavily used the first 3 or 4 days, but it's balanced off to a couple kids per recess instead of a line of 40 kids wanting to pound on it. So that has come a long way as well, and she's settled into the kettle drum. Yeah, they're both being used well so far. Other questions? All right, thank you guys.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up, our building update from Michelle Payne, Flathead.
Hey, thank you. Awesome. I wanted to talk a little bit about our school this year and specifically our strategic plan. And so I will start that going around the table there. And to explain to you how this came into being. So I start with the school board goals and priorities that you created. And I always look at it as the umbrella. So the board goals and priorities are the umbrella. What I come up with for my own building, things we want to work on for the year in my strategic plan, all of that lives underneath the umbrella. Okay, so thank you for doing the important work that you do, because your work guides my work as I move forward into the new school year. So this year's strategic plan has 4 different goal areas, and I wanted to touch on just a couple things in those goal areas. So moving right along, our first goal area is safe and connected school. And we worked on a couple of things there. If you could scroll down to the next slide, the Flathead Honor Code. You might remember last year I talked a little bit about the challenging behaviors that we had coming off of COVID and just the wonkiness, I think, that existed for high schools everywhere. We just saw a lot of interesting behaviors last year that we weren't prepared for. We saw immaturity in our students, and we weren't prepared for that. We weren't prepared for our freshmen to act like 7th graders. And so going into this year, we said, okay, we're going to start the year by emphasizing these are our behavioral expectations. And at Flathead, we honor ourselves, we honor the community, and we honor the moment. We've had those expectations for a long time, but we really, really emphasize them with students. And I'm pleased to report that it's been a good year overall for behavior. We've kind of let ourselves back out, and thank goodness. But we spent time on that as the year began. The second part in that goal area that is important for you to learn about is our restorative practices. We use our teaching staff, so our teachers teach 5 classes. They have 1 personal prep and 1 duty period. And that duty period can be really exciting things like wandering, walking the halls and checking the bathrooms, or being a study hall teacher, or monitoring in-school suspension. Things that we have to cover that we have no other way to cover. But we use our duty periods in other ways as well. So we have a teacher, Patty Hodges, one of our language teachers, who is really passionate about restorative practices, and so her duty is to do restorative conferences with students. And so she may, I'll give you some examples. There was an instance early in the school year in a choir class where two girls kind of got argumentative and elevated in their behavior, and that caused a big blow up in choir class. And so Patty Hodges, our teacher on her duty assignment, had a restorative conversation with the one student who was the instigator in that whole incident. What came out of that was the student addressed the teacher, the choir teacher, and offered an apology, and in such a heartfelt way that the choir teacher was like, wow, I've never had that honest, that genuine of a response before. And that gave me cause to reflect a little bit. Part of what I really think our restorative conferences do for kids is it gives them skills in knowing how to respond to conflict, knowing what to say to somebody, when you've screwed up, like what to say to the other person, what to say and how to act if you're the victim. Like if you're on the victim role of, say, harassment or bullying, like how do you face that other person and hear them out and be able to move on? And so our restorative practices have been very successful. Other things we've done, harassment instances, and also we've had some conferences with students who are chronically absent, or absenteeism. We've been able to hone in on that, and I want to give a shout out and thank you for supporting our attendance incentive. This year, attendance week by week is up 5%. 5 percentage points higher every single week, and the week before Christmas, a year ago in 2021, that short little week before the Christmas break, we had an attendance rate of 79%. This year, if you're not counting our remote day where we had to, could do the weather, if you don't count that day, we were at 89%. So that's a 10 percentage point difference. It's noticeable. And when you have fewer kids who are absent, then you can really hone in on the ones who are chronically absent and need some support. And we've been able to do that through our restorative conferences. Next, on our goal area, support for all learners. We have always thought that we do a good job with our freshman class in supporting them as they start high school. We provide mentoring. That mentoring goes on throughout the first semester, takes them through their final exams and into that beginning of the second semester. And we've always felt really good about what we do with freshmen. But then that causes us to wonder, well, what about our sophomores? Like, what could we do for our sophomores? And this year we tried something new, and this is a project called the Sophomore Strengths Project, based on a program called Unreserved, which is a Montana-grown project that has kids reflect on themselves, and in particular their heritage, their hurdles, their happiness, and their hope. And we had our sophomores reflect on that, do some work in their social studies classes, because every sophomore has a social studies class. And then if you scroll through, we had all sophomores on a day in December in the Boyle Gym where they got to work on their projects. And maybe you saw the projects as you came in. We have them displayed out here. They are very colorful and very creative, and kids did a lot of different things. And so we purposely mixed kids up and put them at tables with kids that maybe they didn't know. And they had a facilitator at the table, and they worked through these projects together and talked about some of their heritage, hurdles, happiness, and hope. And so that was pretty exciting, and I'm very proud of that project there. A challenging and diverse learning environment is our third goal area. And now the next slide, you've heard me talk about this before, increasing our number of students who access IB courses. And you've heard this before, 2/3 of our students in the junior and senior class take one or more IB courses. while they're at Flathead High School. And we came across a little tidbit today that, because, I really wanted them to be a higher number, right? I wanted that to keep growing. And our goal really, because we truly believe that most kids can access IB. We have differentiated levels of IB, the very rigorous, most rigorous, and some courses that are more accessible. And so we really wanted that number to be higher than 2/3. But it's about the same this year. We were looking at some information from Billings Senior High School because we're planning our PIR day for Monday, and we learned about some things that Billings Senior did last year, and we came across a little tidbit that was on one of their slides further back to school in August, and it talked about, so Billings Senior has 1,800 kids, so bigger than Flathead, right, by a few hundred kids, couple hundred kids. And at Billings Senior, 119 students access AP classes. Now, Billings Senior doesn't offer IB, but they offer AP, which is an advanced course offering. So 119 out of their juniors and seniors is like 13%. Suddenly I felt a little bit better about my 66%, right? I'm like, oh my gosh. So we have more work to do, but that is always a goal of ours. Transformational learning has been a journey for us this year, and we are working, Pete's helping us work through the new course proposal process, which you can hear about later this month. And we've done a lot of work and done a lot of innovating. Not all of it transformational, right? But we're starting. The cogs in the wheel are starting to move, and change in schools is very slow. And so I counted it as a win that we had a lot of different academic departments come up with new ideas. And, we're on a roll, and we're gonna keep rolling. But this is one of my favorite pictures so far this year. This is our IB, biology, and ESS crew, our science crew. And this is from this fall. They went to the Flathead River, they pulled on their waders, they went out and they did some field work and did some lab work on the Flathead River, which I think is pretty darn awesome. And we, in our work on transformational learning, we are thinking about, okay, what do we already do? And how can we make that better? How can we expand and grow and provide opportunities for more kids? And so looking at what we do and using that as a springboard has been an important part of that process. Internships. Brent talked a little bit about the kids that come over for Learn and Serve, counting those as some of our 29 student internships that we have rolling this year. This is the work-based learning component, brand new for us this year, but wow, we've got a great start. And these are all the different areas that our students are participating in internships in our community. And I think that's awesome. Hats off to Mike Kelly, who's done a wonderful job at getting this rolling, and we expect this to grow considerably. Highly effective staff. Thinking about how we move our staff forward this year, we spent a lot of time on transformational learning, right? But we've been focusing on some other things in this goal area as well. We've done a little bit of IEFA and a book study. It's on the next slide there. Brothers on Three, anybody heard of that book? Montana related? Okay, Brothers on Three is about the Arley basketball team. It's Class B basketball in Montana on a reservation. Abe Street is the author. He's a national writer, and he spent time on the reservation and wrote this book about the Arley Warriors, and they had back-to-back boys basketball championships, which made for a good story and an interesting read. But look at what we did with it. We took the essential understandings from IEFA, right, that by law in Montana, we have to teach IEFA to our students. And so we looked at the book, we talked about the book, but then we also went through the 7 essential understandings, and we found places in the book that connected. And there were all kinds of connections, right? It was really pretty awesome. And one of my favorite things about this book, using this book, is some of the people in the book study some of my 32 people who were involved in reading the book. I had teachers who were like, oh yeah, I was working at Fort Benton during that, I was at that game that they talked about in the book. And, so just really interesting connections, and I think it helps our staff really connect to the way we do education in Montana, and just how we operate is well connected to IEFA. And so that's often been a challenging area. IEFA, right, we can work it into social studies and English and art pretty easily, and then beyond that, it can be hard, it can be challenging. And so I was really excited about circling back to IEFA in this book study. Year 2 of learning teams. Last year, you heard me talk about learning teams. I mix up our staff into cross-curricular groups, and I give them 2 department leaders as facilitators. And we have 5 early releases for staff development in the calendar, and we use those for various things, but we use them for learning teams. And this provides a great opportunity for discussion. I'm always very purposeful and targeted about what we're doing in our learning teams. Tomorrow, in our learning teams, we're doing a gallery walk of sophomore strength artwork that are displayed in our school here, and we're reflecting on that. Like, what does this tell us? What are our sophomores, through their artwork, telling us about what's important to them, what they struggle with, what makes them happy, what brings them hope? And so that's what we're doing in our learning team activity tomorrow. I can't wait. It's going to be super fun. The Brave Dog Challenge is a staff wellness project that I've taken on. We're in year 3 of the Brave Dog Challenge. And I always call these days and weeks in January and February, I always call those the dog days of the school year, because they're hard, right? It's dark out, we're tired, we're switching semesters, and it's just really a hard time to be in education. And so we have this purposely during that time, and it's a wellness challenge, so we do physical fitness, we have special events, there's a badminton tournament that gets pretty contentious. This year we're learning pickleball. I have one of my younger, really tall male PE teachers who's teaching swing dancing. Like, we do all these different kinds of things, and you earn points and you can win prizes. And we just try to have fun and support each other during these dog days of the school year. And so that starts on Monday. We will have over 50 people participate in that again. So that was pretty fun. So that's my plan, 22-23 school year. We're doing a lot. I'm proud of my staff, proud of our kids. It's been a great year so far, and I just want to thank you for doing the work you do, because you help guide us in our work and help us all move forward. So thank you.
Any questions? Yeah.
I always have. I don't know if this is actual or if it just is the perception, but I had heard that there was a lot of new students, and I heard there was a lot of like English as second language students. Is that actually true? Like, are there more this year than there were in the past? And how's that going with integrating into the school?
Oh, great question. Yes, we have had an influx, and that just this year, we've always had a small number, but this year we've had Ukrainian students, we've had Colombian, Venezuelan, just a lot of different cultures in our school. And you're going to see some, if you do a Gallery Rock sophomore strength, they were part of our group, and they had some interesting things to say. We're able to support our English language learners because of the number of them through our reading intervention classes, and we have a special section, because, teaching a kid who's the second grade, third grade reader and teaching a kid who's learning English, 2 different things, right? I mean, similar, but different. And so we've been fortunate to have an ELL class that is a 5th period class that supports each other and focuses primarily on English language learner things. And it's been pretty successful. We have a teacher, Kurt Johnston, one of our Spanish teachers, just because a lot of our learners are Spanish speakers. He meets with them, they kind of have their own little group that meets after school and on Wednesdays and kind of supports each other and just, you know, kind of helping them navigate through school, because there's the whole learning English part, but then there's the, okay, well, so there's a dance coming up, and here's what, you know what I mean, like just
Yeah.
helping kids through high school, right, and just the nuts and bolts there. So we'll, you know, we take each kid that walks in our door, and if we continue to expand and grow, great, we'll be ready to support them.
Thank you, Michelle. Anything else, Rebecca?
I'm interested in this focus on the IB program. Why, in your view, would a student, or should a student take an IB course over a regular English course, I suppose? I mean, if they're not interested in college, and so that's not their path, yeah, why do you think that it's most important for them to be in an IB course?
Great question. If you take a look at the IB learner profile, which is just a list of beliefs in education that IB has come up with, it contains things like we want kids to be critical thinkers. We want them to be able to be exposed to perspectives that might be different from their own, right? Like, how do you evaluate that? How do you get along with people who might hold a different perspective than you do? How can you just acknowledge that and still get along in the world? There's just a lot of good learner qualities that IB holds as tenets in their beliefs, and I think that every kid should have those things. And so to me, IB is a way to learn how to be a good person. And whatever you may do, college, work, whatever, right? There's just a lot to that. We could spend a lot of time on that. But that, to me, those are the qualities we want all kids to have.
I guess, on the flip side, I mean, if you wanted 100% IB enrollment, I think English and history are both required for graduation. You could just have no non-IB English and history. I mean, it
Oh,
seems,
we've
I'm
had that
just pushing
discussion.
further. Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
English is really the primary, English is the perfect spot to do that, right? Because you need 4 years of English to graduate. And, there are some schools that we found that have what they call IB for all. And so English 11 is IB English, right? And I would say, because we've worked on this one for a number of years, that we could do IB for almost all. Almost. So there's still room to grow. I really believe that, in that 2/3, I think we can get higher, and kids can be successful in it, right? And that's the thing to understand, is that we're not just pushing. We truly believe kids can learn and thrive and grow in an IB English class if they're advanced, proficient, nearing proficient as a reader. Absolutely.
So with, IB for 11th and 12th grade, we have other English classes. How do they get into IB English? Are they checking a box saying, yes, I'd like that? Are they taking a test? Or how
And,
are they
well, that's a great
involved
question too,
in that?
because in some places, advanced courses like IB and AP you have to test to get into them, and we don't philosophically believe in that. We feel like any kid who wants to try, we're gonna support. And so when it comes time for registration, which is in a few weeks, right, our sophomores that are gonna be registering for junior classes, we go in and we talk to those kids and say, hey, you could take IB literature. If you were an advanced reader, it's gonna be the most rigorous English class you can take. But if you're standard or even hearing proficient, you could take language lit. And we're gonna help you be successful, and you're gonna find success. Thank you, sorry.
I have one more question.
Oh, one more, sorry.
Parking. What happened with your whole meeting about the parking? Or just a saga
Deep sigh,
continue?
deep sigh on my part. I went to that meeting, and there's a big circle drawn around the Florida High School community, blocks, all around on the map. But there's only a few of the streets that are restricted in parking. and that there was a street in question that was petitioning to be part of the restricted area. And I gave my 2 cents and talked about a lot of different things, but in the end, they voted to support the increased restriction on parking. It's just a tough one, right? And, yeah, I could spend a lot more time. We could talk at a later time. A lot of components to that, but, you know, bottom line is, you know, our kids lead complex lives, so this idea of why can't they all take the bus, right? Like, that just doesn't really work, right? Like, we've got kids delivering siblings to school who have a job they have to work at, who might have to pick up a parent. I mean, we have all kinds of reasons why they need to drive to school. And trying to manage and support and find parking for everybody is a challenge.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Next up on the agenda, public comment. At this time, the board will allow 15 minutes for comment on public matters that are not on the main agenda. Members of the audience are encouraged to briefly address the trustees on an issue that is not on our agenda. The chairman of the board will seek comments from the audience on significant items as they occur. Public matters do not include any pending legal matters, private personnel issues, or private student issues. Please do not attempt to address such issues at this time, or you will be ruled out of order. Please note that individuals will be given 3 minutes for public comment. Is there anybody here making public comment?
Good evening, trustees and superintendents. My name is Brian Allen. I am the director of CATS, Kalispell Associated Transporters and Students. Bus drivers have been caring for and protecting kids for generations. Across this country, 554,000 yellow buses drive nearly 30 million kids to school every day. Here in the Flathead Valley, we take protecting the lives of kids very serious. We are at the front line for getting kids to and from school safely. We at CATS feel the drivers and students are not being heard nor respected, and the goals of CATS are as follows. 1, to establish CATS to speak collectively for drivers and students and have CATS recognized by all districts. 2, to establish a common ground for understanding between admin and school bus drivers. 3, to establish consistent rules for discipline and removal of disruptive riders. I have copies of the code of conduct with me tonight. 4, to take the discipline out of the hands of principals, give it to CATS and transportation while working in partnership with principals. 5, to communicate disciplinary results to drivers. We want communication with drivers, period. 6, to get buses out of school, pickup and drop zones safely and efficiently. 7, to implement a monthly 2-way conversation about common interests and problems between admin and drivers. 8, to establish training schedules using bonuses and incentives. The above goals are not set. They are negotiable. The idea is for drivers and students to be represented and respected in the school system. The reason we include students in CATS is that we believe good students should not have to suffer every day because of disruptive students. It is as stressful for the good kids as it is for the bus drivers. We have kids come up to us and ask us if there's anything we can do about these disruptive kids. I've been asked a number of times if I'm trying to start a union. My answer is no. Please understand, it would be a whole lot easier to bring in the AFL-CIO as a the AFL-CIO's Amalgamated Transit Union. I believe this valley would be ripe for bringing in the union. As with anything, there are pros and cons, and we feel we can fix the problems without the union. We are sure you can help us fix the problems, but you can't fix anything without knowing what the problems are. We are positive we can work with anyone willing to work with us. We are ready to extend our hand to everyone interested in positive change. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know we're over 3 minutes. How you doing?
No, that was great. That was very timely.
Run one short.
Thank you. Check, but thanks.
Peter already got it all.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will move on the agenda, human resources and personnel action items. Taking this one, Micah?
I am. In front of you tonight, again, is our biweekly or monthly list, depending on how many times we're meeting, of resignations, hires, terminations, that include classified, certified personnel. I'm just looking for a motion to approve.
Okay, so first of all, are there any questions? Any further information you need as trustees? If not, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the personal action item.
Thank you. It's been moved. Is there a second?
I will second it.
Thank you, Ursula. Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. Before we take a vote, we will have time to deliberate. I'm doing this for Rebecca. I know she's kind of chuckling at me. But we have this discussion, okay? So this is when you weigh the pros and cons, kind of question why are we doing this? Lloyd?
It's not that, I just wonder, I guess I've never asked or never understood, is this, why do we not separate out elementary versus high school when we're voting for personal action items? You want me to answer?
Yes, I do.
Please. I was waiting for your answer, too. So part of the reason, and this goes back quite a bit, but personal action items used to be just a consent agenda item. And then there was the desire from the board years ago to move it into something like this, because the board could technically make a motion, or a member of the board can make a motion to accept, reject, and you have a whole list, but you can also ask to poll an individual for further discussion. So we just put it out there as more of a big transparency piece for the trustees. Jack may also have some other thoughts on this.
To me, the primary reason is because the elementary and high school PBAs aren't separated by, so it's all because of the relationship.
Curious, it was just more of a curiosity than anything.
Good question, and their answers were better than mine.
Just because.
Just because, that's right. Any other clarification, deliberations? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Next up, superintendent evaluation. Gosh, this is me. Okay, here's where I get to chew you guys out. I have 4 responses back on the survey I sent out for the superintendent evaluation.
Who are the four goody two-shoes here?
Are you one of them? And
You're one of them.
I need to have 100% participation in this. And I want to encourage you to write comments. I know from personal experience from having evaluations on me, as well as giving evaluations, the most helpful part of it is the specific instances. You know, how did I do this well? Give me an example of how I did this well. Give me an example of how I need to improve, rather than just, you know, checking off the boxes. That will be very helpful. This, again, is something that has been traditionally done by our HR director, but since our HR director is the person we are evaluating, it falls in my lap. And so you have to kind of bear with me a little bit on this. And in the interest of transparency, I would ask that the governance committee sit down with me on the 18th or the 19th, and that is Ursula and Will and Diane, to go through these results. What will happen then is we print up a report and we bring it to the full board, and we go into a closed session and meet with Micah and go through the results of that. So I'm hoping that we can find a time on those 2 days, because our next work study session, we will be going through the evaluation. Okay, and this is a pretty important thing that we are responsible for. And I encourage you to look at our strategic plan, look at the various goals we have set up for this year when you are filling out your surveys. And the surveys, I don't even see who has filled them out, which is why I say I need 100% participation in this, because I don't know who the 4 people are, although I know it's not me because I haven't gotten mine in yet. But I will caution you that the comments you make, I put in the report verbatim. There's no name attached to it, but it is verbatim. Just to, warn you ahead of time. Okay, so please work on getting that completed, and Will and Ursula and Diana, if we could just chat after we're to set up a time. Next up.
I need a second here to pull a document, so just bear with me.
Not too croaky yet. There. Next up, what we're waiting on the agenda is for the levy discussion. And this is just discussion and information. It is not an action item at this point. I guess information coming around.
Actually, the documents that are trying to get loaded up.
Oh, what we're trying to pull
19?
up.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to kind of start out with kind of an overview of elections in particular, because, we have some levy opportunities to run levy elections, but depending on the type of levy election we run, we're restricted to certain. So basically, May 2nd this year, May 2nd of 2023, that's a Tuesday. That's the date of the regular school election, and that is when we run our trustee election. And in state law, we can also run a general fund levy election. So we would potentially do that for either the elementary or high school of both. And, so in law, we have to run it on the same day as the regular school election, along with the trustee election. However, in a legislative year, the law says that we can postpone a general fund levy election if the legislator is making decisions on school funding, which they always do. And, but in order to have that levy election, should it pass, in order for us to be able to, levy the amount approved by the voters, we need to have it done by August 1st. So we can't extend it. It means that we run a whole separate election, which is costly in a district this size with that many voters. So just wanted to let you know that. So there's a general fund levy election that we can run this year, either at the May trustee election or after that, but before August 1st. Okay?
I may be confused, but I had thought that we were always capable of putting it on the general ballot in November, and that we chose not to because A, it was slightly more expensive, but we wouldn't have to run our own if we did it in November. We could add it to the general election.
I just got clarification on that yesterday.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong.
Because there's a bill right now in the legislature to put that August 1st date actually in the law. Currently, it's not in the law, but I think it's been interpreted, in different ways, but I'm pretty sure this bill's going to pass, and so it's going to limit us for a general fund, just the general fund levy election between May and August in a legislative year. Now, in a non-legislative year, we can only have it on the same day in May as the trustee election. Okay? Now, there are other levy elections that we can have. We currently have an elementary tech levy that was passed, in 2014. We can have a high school tech levy election, right? So elementary and high school for each of these. So we can have a technology levy, we can have a building reserve levy, we can have a, school safety and security levy, also done out of the building reserve fund, to make sure I can get them all. I will keep them here. Yeah, those are basically the only levies in certain funds where we need to seek voter approval. Okay? So, we wanted to have a discussion tonight about, what you might want to do for a levy election. So I'll start with the general fund. In the elementary district, and I just have estimates for right now because, for the 2024 school year, we don't have the second enrollment count for February. We'll be doing that in about 3 weeks. The legislature hasn't, determined what the new rates will be for fiscal years 2024 and 25. So just in an estimate, I would say we would be looking at, if we ran a general fund levy election, the elementary level, it would be about $550,000. And at the high school, it would be, 2.6 million. And the reason that it's so high at the high school is because we have not been able to pass a high school levy, for a long time, and we are actually sitting at about 90% of our maximum budget because of that. Okay, so that's the information I have on the general fund levy. The technology levy, we do have an existing one for the elementary. It was passed in 2014. The last year that we can, use that levy is in 2024, and then it's done. It gets us around, it's set at 11.3 mils, and that brings in roughly $800,000, so give or take. So again, yeah, next year's last year, so then we would not have that levy if we don't try to go for another one. We don't have a tech levy at the high school level. I've been working with our IT folks on what we would, if we should run a levy for that, what we would want to do. The goal is to meet the expenditures we're currently making from the elementary tech fund, plus anything out of the elementary general fund that would free up, the general fund obligations, and then have all technology rest in the tech fund. That's upwards of about $1.6 million. So kind of double what it is now, if we were to meet all of our needs. You don't have to set an amount at this point. probably $1 million for the high school if we were do a high school levy. The building reserve levy, oh, and those go for maximum of 10 years. They're limited to 10 years. The building reserve levy that we would do for, any deferred maintenance projects around the district, those we can run and get voter approval for a maximum of 20 years. We do have some identified projects, especially at the high school, that amount to about $2 million easily.
More.
And more. At the elementary, we really haven't, identified anything yet. And the long-range planning study that we would have would probably be good to go through that. And then if you want to run a building reserve levy and how much. Then the school and student safety levy, which is also within the building reserve fund. Currently, there's no maximum, number of years that you can ask for in that one, but I know that there's legislation out there that would limit it. So we'll see, what gets passed in law. That particular levy, what we might want to cover in that levy would be things like our, school resource officers, our surveillance cameras, training, certainly training. We could identify, quite a few things that we could use in support of, school and student safety and security from that levy. So that's just kind of an overview of, the possible levies that are out there. What you see on the screen here is a history of the various, levies that have been brought forth, back to about 1997, and then going upwards. So you can see that on each side, looks like on the elementary side, we've been a bit more successful with those levies. Lots of attempts at levies, on the high school side.
Can I just interrupt for just a second?
Sure.
And Matt, if you scroll down to the bottom, so the left-hand side is the elementary, right-hand side is the high school. And, you can start looking, so there's general fund levies, which are those operational levies, and those are permanent. So once you pass, they become part of your funding, forever. The building reserve, you see there's limits on those. There were times when we tried to pass building reserve levies for a 5-year period, so the district would say, gosh, we need new HVAC units, we need a new roof, we need a gym floor, we need to replace the bleachers. Here are these things that we need, as a district, and then you'd ask your taxpayers to support that. And so you see very specific dollar amounts in those. And then as you move up, you can see that, in 2007, on the high school side, that was the last time we passed a general fund levy on the high school side. And 2007 was the same year that Glacier High School opened. And the general idea was that if we don't pass this levy, this operational levy, we will not be able to open up Glacier High School. And so we built it, and knowing that the bond is what built the building, the operational levy is what runs the building, and pays for the staff and the utilities and the insurance and the custodians and all of those things. Since 2007, if you kind of work your way up, you can see that there were some other building reserve levies that were attempted that did not pass. And basically those were kind of rolled into the bond in 2016, where Flathead High School, that was what paid for the major renovations at Flathead High School, Legend Stadium, but then we also had a bond on the elementary side that built Rankin, added the gyms to all of the different buildings. So you see we're pretty successful when it comes to the bond initiatives in our valley. But I think the other important thing to notice on here is how many years since 2007 where we actually didn't even run a levy, where it was the opinion of the superintendent and the business director that we didn't need to actually run a levy, or the board decided we're not going to run a levy. So 2 different things could have happened there. But I think we only attempted to run a levy 5 times since 2007, the last time being last year. We have tried to run levies for smaller amounts, say 500,000. We've tried levies for 1.2 million. We've tried levies for $1.5 million last year, knowing that it would have been tax neutral, because we would have been able to reduce some of our other levies. And so I wanted you to see like this history from 1997 all the way through 2021, of what the district has done and what our community has done in terms of support of levies. So, sorry Denise, I just wanted to kind of give that kind of historical perspective, on that particular piece. And so a lot of times when we run levies, some of the pushback we get is, gosh, you guys are always asking for money. One, that's not true, as evidenced by the history. We don't always put out for a levy. Sometimes we're asking for a land acquisition, like when we purchased the new transportation maintenance building land, there was an acquisition levy. But then we also have these bonds, and so people, my taxes went up. I can't believe how much I'm paying for education. We're actually paying for the buildings, and those levies those bonds will sunset. They're usually run for a maximum of 20 years. And so there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes that our taxpayers and maybe even our board doesn't realize, that we refinance bonds from time to time, and it will actually save our taxpayers millions of dollars in doing that. But you might see an increase in your taxes for 1 year because of the repayment schedule, and then you'll see that it starts to degrade. So it gets a little bit complicated, but I wanted to point that out to our trustees, because I think the discussion that we're going to have, and as Deborah was encouraging, rich discussion and not just jumping into decisions. And certainly we wrestle with this as an administrative team, and even in our own office on a Monday morning meeting, like, what are we going to do? What's the priority? And people come at it from a different perspective, right? Well, I think the priority is elementary technology. Well, I think the priority is the high school general fund. We're $2.6 million short there. Certainly not our decision, but it's a board decision on what direction you want to go, how much you want to ask for. My experience so far in the 3 years that I've been the superintendent is that we push this decision off until really late, and the amount until really late. And then we have a very short window with which to communicate to our community, here is what we need, here's the why, and here's what would happen if we don't pass the levy. And so want to engage the board in that big discussion, because I don't pretend to have the answer or the solution. There's lots of arguments for, well, we should run a levy in the fall. People are happier. Their kids are going back to school. Hooray. Versus May, when you just paid your tax bill in April and we're grumpy about it. There's a whole list and variety of arguments that can be made. And I think that's a decision that the board needs to make. And so that we have a plan moving forward for what direction we need to go. How's that? Okay, I'll turn it back over to you.
I would just add that you see that, at 2020, okay, the 2021 general fund levy in the elementary, that levy was approved in 2021, but it wasn't really used. It was determined by the business director and the superintendent and the board that, yeah, the voters approved it, but we don't need to levy it in 2022. So the first time we actually used that voter-approved levy was in 2023. So, we asked for it and get it passed, but then, we do make sure that that we assess what we need. The only other thing, so, I started off saying, when can you have a levy? Again, the general fund is in May. The other levies we talked about can be run at any time, and then like I said, we might want to consider other levies maybe in the fall. That they all cost, the levy election costs money, and in this district, upwards of $50,000. So, and I think that would be the cost, whether we run it ourselves or if the county ends up figuring out how to run a school election with their resources, and will do it for us, which we're still pursuing. So I'm gonna maybe let you guys talk about it and just ask questions if you'd like.
Okay, so Denise and Micah, I just want to get this clarified in my mind, that tonight we are making a decision, in our other action items down here, whether or not we want to run a levy. And we have several choices that we could make. Running a general levy in May, something else in the fall, like a tech levy or a safety levy. Am I on the right track there? We don't have to attach amounts to them yet?
Right. So, the regular election in May, the deadline for calling for that election is February 21st. So, but we wanted to put that option out for you today as an action item. If you would like to call a levy election tonight and pass those resolutions, you will have to have a trustee election because there's 2 elementary seats open and 2 different high school seats open. When you adopt your resolution calling for an election, you should also specify if you plan to run a levy election as well. You don't have to set the amount. You have up until, when we certify the ballot, which would be around the end of March, to set the actual amount. So we would recommend that we would like to see you call for an election and possibly determine which levy elections you would choose to have tonight so that we have more time to get the information out about that levy to the taxpayers so we can, start explaining things. I think that a general fund levy election is in order. Probably the high school more than the elementary, just because it is so much more in size, and that, the fact that we're at 90% of maximum budget is really hard to work with, and it's going to be hard to work with to meet budget needs. The elementary, I guess my only concern about that is we'll have our taxpayers voting for an increase in the elementary and in the high school. I'm not sure that they would be open to that in this, still in our economic time. So maybe just going for one, and that being the high school.
Question, please. On your screen, it says, on the 2014, where it says tech levy year, says 2024, mine says 2025.
Oh, it's, we had a discussion about that today. It's 2024.
Okay.
I got all excited when I saw that and then.
And you said that's when it runs out? Or is that what you said, if that's when it runs out?
Well, this sheet, I think that 2025 date's been there for quite a while. And so, I got pretty excited thinking we had one extra year, but we did not.
Okay.
So that should say 2024 on there.
Denise, some of the cost of the, high school levies is mailing ballots out to places we don't normally mail ballots out to. But this year, you're saying that there's 2 high school areas, so that's 2 of the 4, there's 4 total, or how much does that reduce? Is it a lot cheaper to run the high school levy this May rather than a year from now in May? I mean, not that I'm even suggesting it, I like my numbers.
The high school, any high school levy is going to involve all the districts involved. The whole high school district, which is Kalispell Elementary, plus all the 13 districts that feed into the high school. So we will always spend the maximum amount we would. Because I think you're kind of trying to compare to just Kalispell Elementary on its own, right? And that,
Right, but
that
I'm
might
already
be
mailing to some of
Right.
the high school districts this election because we have a trustee election for the high schools as well.
Exactly, yes. It's more efficient to run the levy elections because you're running a high school election anyway. Now, depends on how many people sign up to be a high school candidate. I mean, if we don't have a race, then I guess we're not running an election, but we won't know that. We won't know that now, and I don't know that that would necessarily enter into your decision. Hey, Jack had a question.
go ahead.
You should be calling it.
Going back to the numbers you gave for the general election, I think you, rounding them off, you said 500,000 for elementary and about 2 million for high school. Those would be the maximum amounts?
Yes, those would be the maximum.
Okay. So what, I guess the discussion in my mind isn't so much whether we should run it, but at least on the high school level, how much? Do you run it for the full 2 million, or do you run it for something less than? And to me, that's the discussion. The discussion on the other three types of levies, the building reserve, the technology, and the safety, those can occur at another point in time, and it doesn't necessarily mean it'll be this month or next month or whatever, but in my mind, we just want to focus on the general, and whether we say 2 million, 1 million, or 500,000, I think that's where the discussion needs to be.
So we had talked a little bit about that, Jack, and right now we're looking at, at a minimum, based off the numbers we have today, about a $400,000 shortfall on the high school side, if everything stayed the same. That's not accounting for any inflationary costs, increased fuel costs, heating costs, property and liability insurance, health insurance, any salary commitments that we've already made through negotiations with all of our bargaining units.
You said a $400,000 shortfall even with a $2 million levy? That's what you're saying?
No, just if nothing else changed.
Oh, with no levy?
With no levy.
We're at a 400,000 shortfall.
Not including the deficits that we would incur around salary increases that have already been negotiated for all of our.
And those are the types of numbers that, well, tonight we just have to decide if we want to run a levy. We don't have to decide the dollar amount.
Right.
But what you're talking about is the information we need to know in order to determine the size of the levy.
Yeah, and as Denise and I talked about it this afternoon a little bit, and we want to get you some really solid numbers. We can kind of, give you some guesstimations. For example, a 1% increase on just certified teacher salaries is $1 million, is generally our benchmark. So we have a 1.5% just on the general fund side of that, and that doesn't include our classified staff, our custodials, our bus drivers, non-union employees, et cetera. So right now we're feeling like, and you have to parse that out, elementary, high school, but we're feeling like it's probably going to be upwards of that 2 million. And if it doesn't pass, then the next big discussion is, what are we going to cut?
So what would be what's the 4 million, the 400,000 shortfall, that's on the high school side? How does it look on the elementary side, approximately?
600,000 short?
Yeah.
Including our levy.
We have to remember passing,
Including the levy we already passed, yeah.
we have to remember passing a motion to call for a general fund levy doesn't commit you to having to run it. You can always cancel it. So
Correct.
there's no harm in passing a motion to put a levy in front of the voters. Because then the next step is deciding the amount, and then the next step after that still allows for cancellation. So we're not putting a burden on ourselves by saying, yes, we're going to put a levy in front of the people, because there's still additional steps.
I mean, except for the possibilities of a paper print a big thing, Kalispell High School running 7 levies this fall before we have a chance to get our message out of why we need them. To me, that's some of how it failed last time, was the message of Kalispell Public Schools greedily asking for more money was the very first message heard. So I do think there is possible harm that we may not have thought of yet.
Just wonder if, this last levy that we tried to pass, failed, was it seems like, the public had a pretty stark message on that one. And I wondered if there's anything we can do, at this time to try to increase public's, trust in the district or whatever it is that made them vote that way. If this just happened this last year and the next year we go back to the very same thing without addressing why that happened, what kind of message are we sending, to the voters? I mean, it's just a rhetorical question, but something we should all think about.
And then Ursula.
I guess my thought on that is, and looking at all there's more attachment to the taxpayer to the elementary district than there is to the high school district. There's detachment there. The rural taxpayers are attached to their rural districts. They're not attached to the high school district. So how do you make the attachment? We're at a loss to make that attachment. We've attempted many meetings out at the different elementary schools over the years to try and even have people show up at the meetings. And it's been very, not well attended. So I don't know what the answer is to get some kind of an attachment from the rural taxpayers to the high school districts where their children all end up. So it's the magical question that doesn't have a magical answer right now.
I think one of the challenges, at least from where I sit, and, certainly worked on the marketing side of this and communication side is, aside from maybe the paper and the Flathead 411, I don't have a really strong connection to those outlying district taxpayers, the retired people in Marion or West Valley or Lakeside or Summers, and, have a pretty strong connection to people who have kids in schools. And so I think that's probably one of the bigger challenges. It's not so much that, and the feedback that I would get is, well, what are you going to spend it on? And, and kind of always the response was, well, 90% of what we spend our budget on is salary and benefits. The other 10%, which goes towards activities and travel and property and liability insurance and, those kind of things, just doesn't leave a lot of room for those other things. But I think that's what people really want to see communicated. It's not so much that there's an ask, but they want to just know, like, where is this money going? And there's a lot of assumptions out there about how, school districts spend their money. And we always maintain, like, open book, anytime you want to come, like, read the warrant list on a board agenda, right? You can see exactly how every nickel in this district is spent. So those are the challenges that I think, at least from my perspective, is, how do you communicate more effectively with what that need is? And I think the other challenge, and I said this at finance, and I certainly said it within our group, is, we've always maintained kind of a nice guy approach to trying to pass levies in our community. We're going to do whatever we can to have the least amount of impact on students. And it may not be visible or felt, but an example would be we eliminated hall monitors from the high school district, what was that, 7 years ago? Yeah, somewhere around there. Those hall monitors are the eyes and ears of a school. They know what's going on with their kids. It's a safety thing. It's, not just a matter of this is a convenience, but we have to make a decision. What's going to have the least amount of impact on a student in a classroom? You look at our challenges with curriculum purchases. We're having to set money aside in the interlocal agreement in order to amass money in order to be able to buy textbooks for our students. With a healthy general fund, we're able to budget appropriately for those kind of things rather than using textbooks that are 20 years old. You look at the challenges, and I remember I used to talk with Mark Plateau about this. I'm like, why is there not a line item in the budget for high school technology? Right? It has to be treated as like this separate thing, but we know we are in a technology-rich world. Everywhere you look around here, microphones, communications, computers, Chromebooks. we have to be able to adapt and have our kids have access to that type of stuff so that they're relevant in their education and their learning. So this is just, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger on, you know, what is the need, and why. And I don't know how we effectively do that, and communicate to, you know, our communities and to our outlying districts. I remember I went out to a rural school and did a presentation for, 2 hours. Heather invited me out and, you know, had great conversations with people, about it. And I think I felt like when we left, people were like, oh, okay, we understand, we get this.
Hold on, but it was a really sad turnout.
It was.
4 people.
12, yeah. So, yeah, that's a challenge, at least for me.
Ursula, you've been waiting.
Well, so it went on what Rebecca said and what Lloyd said. So Rebecca mentioned that last year it was set up in a way that what we were asking for was going to end up tax neutral. And before we were able to start any of our messaging, the paper put out there an article that I saw multiple times on the internet through the entire thing saying, we're asking for a levy that's going to increase a $200,000 house by $12 for however long. And that's the messaging that got out there. I do think that's really hard. I think that the message of keeping it tax neutral was amazing, and I'm wondering if there is any way that we could potentially still, like, if it was going to stay the same, does that mean theoretically what we have been collecting from the high school district has decreased, and could that be part of the message, or did that opportunity pass last year with the levy failing? Like, is there a message, is there any clear way to say we aren't actually, like, you're still paying less than you were 2 years ago before these other things sunset, or is that too complicated now?
I could certainly let Denise talk a little bit about it, but layman's terms are, you know, part of what made it tax neutral was the property values went up and there were more people. And so the same amount of money is being collected, but it's being spread over a broader base. And so I think there's still that potential with the growth that we've experienced in our valley. There's some areas where we could potentially reduce a little bit on the permissive levy side. You know, but it's really interesting, and from a funding standpoint, you know, building a reserve, general fund, school safety and technology are the only voted levies for schools.
Right.
And you have all the permissive levies, transportation, tuition, you know, so debt service, I mean, all of those kind of things become non-voted, but they become part of the operating budget as well. And that's where people feel like, gosh, 40% of my taxes go to education. You're right. But when you actually look at it and you look at like a statistical report from the Flathead County Superintendent's Office, you can see over the last 5 years, the local taxpayers only contributed $50,000 more in the Flathead High School District from 5 years ago to today. 50,000. You have some districts in Columbia Falls, Whitefish, Big Fork, where they're in the $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 of local taxpayer contributions increases to their budgets. I mean, when we don't pass a levy, I mean, we're getting some increases from the state because our numbers have increased, but we're still only being funded at 90%. And when Denise talks about the inflationary increase that the legislature is looking at, that 3%, if it gets to that, that's the maximum. That's only on 44% of the budget. So it's never as much as you think it's going to be or seem. And I don't know if Denise, if you would add anything more to that.
Well, just to address, what Ursula's talking about is, you know, so on the ballot, we're required to say what the tax impact is on home value at 100,000, 200,000. So I think that this happens statewide when it's reported in the paper. And I saw West Valley's bond issue is the one that really stood out to me. Is in the paper, they were asking for this huge amount, right? And it was a pretty big impact, like, you know, $250 to $500 increase a year. And I thought, oh gosh, there's one because of that. And what's interesting is we tend to take what we're required to put on the ballot and put it in the newspaper. We're not required to put that information in the newspaper, but we tend to do it. I mean, I think the districts all over the state do that, and that might be something that maybe we can, you know, visit with the paper about in that, you know, reporting it, but it's their paper and they're going to report it the way they do.
Yeah.
And that's just an ongoing year in and year out, that's how it's presented. But if you remember the conversation that we had when you adopted your budget, we went through all those budgeted funds and pointed out that, you know, even though the levy didn't pass, it was going to be tax neutral anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, yeah, I mean, just responding to your question and what goes in the paper and what shouldn't,
Mm-hmm.
we don't have full control over it, and there's just past practices that kind of just put that out there for just that fund, because that's what's allowed on the, or that's what's required on the ballot.
Mm-hmm. Do you think there's the potential, though, for messaging, like, is it going to be a big impact? I mean, you're kind of saying it's not going to be a big impact on the average taxpayer, especially when you talk about how long it's been since 2017. Like, do you think that there is a way we can make that message clear, or maybe not?
There's probably a way we
Yeah.
can try, but,
Mm-hmm.
you know, perception, I think last year too, we were in the middle of, lots of press nationwide about gas prices going up and inflation, and I think that works against.
Jack?
The difficulty with it is to try and explain what we do in the budget. We're trying to be neutral there to what is required to be put on a ballot, which translates into a tax increase as far as the ballot goes. But there's no way to draw a correlation between that and the budget, because that's coming up in the next budget year.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no way, and that it can be, either way you go, you can be accused of being misleading.
Okay.
And so as a school district, we're not gonna win that battle. But what we have in front of us right now is the decision to run a levy. We're not deciding the dollar amount of the levy, but when we do decide the dollar amount of the levy, when we have all the reasons for it, then that can be put into a press release or whatever in order to have that available, even though the reporters may not follow a press release, they may just follow what they hear as far as the meeting goes. So to me, the only thing you can do is just have the reasons immediately available with maybe dollar amounts attached to those in order to help clarify it a little bit at that point in time. But right now, we're just looking at saying yes or no, we're gonna run a levy, one that we can cancel at any point in time. I'll make a motion to that effect if we're ready for that.
Well, we always have that second part where we can discuss it further, but I got two more questions before.
And it's not a question.
Oh, comment.
I don't really have a
Jennifer?
comment. I don't have a question.
Oh, comment?
I have a comment.
Okay. Diane and then Jennifer.
My comment was just hoping to be able to, I think right now, we're just hoping to give administration guidance on what direction they want us to go as a board.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of, for everybody, I think like both Micah and Denise touched on it, like time is on our side, right? So if we decide that we want to do a levy, and then the sooner that we can come up with the amounts, the better, so that we can start getting our messaging out, right? And then if, Micah, it sounds like there's information there, like facts available to us in the county superintendent office or wherever. So that's undisputable, like let us have some of that information so we can get it out there. And I think just having a big campaign, like being able to do a press release and then having social media and having the trustees, you know, kind of back it and be able to talk to people would be the way to push it out. I didn't see see a lot of that last year. I just saw a lot of the negatives, but there was so much going on, already with inflation and people and just coming out of COVID, and I think it was just a really hard year. But maybe this year could be a better if everybody kind of takes it on and tackles little bits and pieces.
Jennifer. Okay, one more, and then I'll let Jack make his motion.
So I do tend to think more on, Diane's side than Jack's side, that, yes, you know, we're at 90% funding for the high school, we have been for many years, but, you know, we need to have the high school fully funded in order to keep it running. We do probably need to run a levy, and we need to make a motion for it, but we also do want to have that, what was it she said, rich, just meaningful dialogue about, you know, how much and when and how we want to go about this. And we want to do it early because we've been late for a long time. So I guess the question is, so Micah, last time we talked about hiring a publicity firm to work on this, and we couldn't get one because they couldn't get the things printed in time. And we talked it, I think, whichever meeting was that you thought everyone was busy, but you're gonna see. Has something changed? I mean, I don't want to spend $55,000 on another failed levy. I'm sure nobody in this room wants to spend $55,000 on a failed levy, if that's even the number. Maybe it's much higher. But, so what has changed? And I'm hoping what's changed is we got a kick-ass, publicity firm to help us message this. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you please not put that in precise words?
Great. Put parentheses, great, or like brackets.
I'm gonna address a couple of different things. One is that the way the agenda was set up tonight was to, one, have this rich discussion about levies and kind of what options are, run in the fall, run in the spring, what type. Don't really have to get into how much, but then the second part of this, there's two resolutions. We have to have a resolution for elementary trustees and for high school trustees, and that's where we're hoping to see a motion for a levy election. Correct, Denise?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's first. Second, last year we tried to see if there was a marketing firm, and I'd prefer to call it a communications firm locally.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I think you can use those terms interchangeably, but a communications firm that would help us in getting the message out. And it was really late notice. We found a firm out of Billings. They've helped Billings with some of their elections. They said, here's what you need to do. We did all those things. They were going to send out a mailer. They recognized the deficit of communication when I only have access to 6,300 students versus, you know, roughly 100,000 people in the valley. Maybe we'll call it 75,000 in Flathead County, but 45,000 of them are registered voters. And so how do you get that information and communication out to them? And then there was some miscommunication. Things didn't end up with at the printer, so things didn't get out. And it was just crazy. It was an election year on top of that, so lots of different things going on. I did talk with Casey Wyckoff, who has RIP Communications, and he is willing to put together a proposal to actually work with the board and any other stakeholders to lead a half-day workshop in developing a communications plan for the district in support of a levy. I can certainly attempt again, but sometimes people get tired of hearing from the superintendent as the only voice. And so trying to, you know, as even Deborah said tonight, like, as soon as you make that decision, you as individual trustees can get out there and start. But if you don't have a plan, if you don't have all the right communication tools, you know, are we putting out promotional videos? Are we telling the right story? Are we communicating in a way that says, if this doesn't pass, this is what's going to happen, or what the net result of that could be? Those are really big discussions. But we do have that option, so.
And when we were doing the long-term facility plans, some of the companies that were trying out for that position seemed to talk a lot about their both bonds and levy passings. And is that a connection that for us that somebody we or you think that's?
Yeah, Casey Wyckoff is with
Oh, that is
LSW, yep,
Okay,
is
sorry.
one of those firms, yep. And they have a RIF, subsidiary called RIF Communications or something to that effect, but, yep. Okay,
All right. Jack?
Before I make a motion, does everybody know what the county statistical report is? Is everybody familiar with that?
No.
Because it's the last page of it that Mike is referring to as far as the tax impacts on, property owners, both state, federal, state, county, and local district taxes.
I will send everybody a link to it. It's on the Flathead County Superintendent's website. There's a link for statistical reports, and you can see statistical reports starting in 2022. They're typically a 10-year look back on most of the data, so enrollment increases, all that kind of stuff, but then there's also some 5-year look backs and then present year and last year. But yeah, you can, but I can send you, everybody a link to it.
With the local, it's interesting, the wide range of even the local impact. You can have districts that might have to pay just 20% of their budget is local, and there's some that have 60% of their budget is local. So it's just interesting where they all sit and rest. So being a high school trustee, the first one probably has to be a motion to approve a high school trustee election. Is that
Which one's
right,
up there
Denise?
first?
The first one is
I mean,
elementary.
there should be 4 different motions, right?
No, it's 2 different motions for the,
So the high school has one motion that can include trustees and the levy?
can you open the high school
Open it.
one, Matt, the PDF for second? This is a call for an election, a resolution calling for an election. So it starts with your trustees here, elementary.
Oh, so this covers both.
Yeah, so this covers just the elementary. This is just an example, so I'm not saying you're gonna ask for an elementary tax levy now, and then, can you open up the? And for the high school one, there's, District 1 and District 2 within the high school district. Open, but then here's what it would look like if you added on the general. There are 2 things on one resolution.
So moved for the high school. Yeah.
And levy,
And levy.
because it's together, right?
As presented right there.
Right, together.
Yeah, they're both on there.
Second that.
Just one other
Or,
thing to note is that.
wait, back up
Oh,
a second.
sorry.
Back.
Oh, my.
First up on the agenda is the elementary.
Okay.
And we never made a motion to switch them around.
Okay.
So, Lance.
I would move to move forward with the election as presented
I
For
second.
the elementary district.
for the elementary.
For the elementary district. Thank you, Lance. Thank you, Jennifer. It's been moved and seconded. Is, there any public comment? Seeing none, is there any other discussion, deliberation?
Go ahead. I understand why we're short on the high school side. You know, we were at 92 last year, it doesn't seem that surprising, we're at 90% this year. The elementary, I don't understand. We just passed the levy 2 years ago, we haven't used it yet because we didn't need it. Why are we suddenly low on the high school thing? I'm sorry, I just don't understand.
You have to remember, it can still be canceled.
No, I understand that we can cancel it, but I want to understand when I'm eventually going to vote for or against it, why.
First of all, the elementary was passed, it was not used the first year, it was used the current year that we're in.
Right, but we
It'll
can still have
continue
it for 2
forward,
more
but
years,
we're
right?
still short money.
So that levy was not up to fully funded, is that what you're saying? That levy
Correct.
was only brought us up to
It-
what percentage?
It was, that brought us up to 100% or near, by whatever calculation we had. But then in the next 2 years, we have fallen that much further back. In 2 years, we fell $600,000 further back of what fully funded is.
Because
Because we have enrollment increases,
The
because.
A&D covers that, or just not fully?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
And just like operational costs?
Yep. Well, so keeping in mind that the state calculates what our maximum budget is, right? Here's your 100%, we're gonna fund 80, the rest comes from property taxpayers. What you'll typically see in a lot of districts is every year they run a levy because there's a new gap between what the maximum is and what you're currently funded at. Because you have enrollment increases, so you get a certain amount of A and B for those students, but that's only 80% of it. And you have to come up with the other 20% to continue to be fully funded. That's why every year, at one point, the high school district was at 100%, and then it was at 99, 98, and so over time, we've continued to fall back. And so without a levy, literally every year, in some districts, you might see it's only $58,000 is all they need to be fully funded. But keeping in mind, we passed the levy that first year, didn't use it, and then 2 years have transpired, and so now we've built up it's about $300,000 a year in additional funding budget authority that we have access to. We just have to pass a levy to do it.
So it's increasing the size of our district and increasing the cost of just everything in the last years, which has led to this. I mean, yeah, the size of the gap, I guess, shocked me.
Yeah, so that's the gap. But what you're looking at is what are your expenses going to be? So you calculate those expenses based off of your current A and B. Maybe you project a 1% increase. You know what the inflationary increase on 44% of that is going to be, and then here's the difference. And so then you start factoring in what are your salary commitments, what are other unanticipated commitments, things that you always know are going to increase. Our utility bills always increase. Our property and liability insurance is going to increase. The cost of gas, certainly it's down right now, but we experienced a year of tremendous increases. So cost of paper, textbooks, Chromebooks, you name it, all those supply things continue to add into that budget deficit.
I guess just to add on to that, is it because we just had this whole conversation, would it be helpful just for moving things forward faster if we did have an idea of kind of how we were feeling as a group about whether we wanted to do just a high school or an elementary? Like, is that a thing that we have a vibe on that we could make progress on right now, or no? Like, if we already have a feeling for it, is it still better just to keep it all open, or are we trying to figure this stuff out as fast as possible?
To me, that answer will come up in either the work session or the next, whenever we're required to have the dollar amount identified, because that will probably be discussed at finance as well as at the board level in order to understand the answers to those questions. So, because right now, all we're saying is we're gonna run those two, but they could both be canceled at any point in time. So really, the dollar amount will be important. It's just not important right now, but it's expected to be part of the decision-making process.
Jennifer?
Sorry, just to back to Ursula, would it be advantageous as a group for us to decide that we are gonna ask for an elementary level levy at the same time as with high school? I know you said, like, with the economic times, maybe it's not the best time, but if we are coming at it with a strategy, and with a game plan for messaging and stuff, would it be advantageous for us to just say, listen, we're gonna have for both an elementary and a high school levy right now, and, like Jack said, we can cancel them at any time, but today, can we just say, let's ask for both?
The $1 billion question,
Yeah.
unintended. Right, so.
2.6 million, Mike.
Right, well, as Denise and I talk about it, right, if you're gonna prioritize, if there's one area that we really need to prioritize today, you're gonna find a wide variety of opinions. I'm not even sure Matt and I agree on what that would be. You could argue that it doesn't hurt to ask for both, and maybe you're gonna get one and not the other, but if voters are coming to to vote, and they're looking at, well, I could do a $550,000 elementary levy, which most voters don't understand that that money cannot be used to support the high school, or a $2.6 million high school levy. I might go for this one, but not this one, right? And so you get into these, but then you could also argue elementary levies have traditionally passed, and bringing the voters who traditionally support a levy to vote may vote for both. That's the discussion for the board. I have an opinion on it, if you want my opinion. I don't want to unduly influence the board. I would actually ask my business director, where is the priority? Take her into the corner, no.
Okay. I feel like my question was answered. It definitely needs a lot more discussion. We'll just keep it open for now.
And the motion is just to agree to move forward and ask for a levy at the elementary level, along with the trustee election. I'm sorry, it's not public comment time right now. And there is a motion on the table, a motion and a second for elementary trustees. Okay?
And it does say elementary Texas. I don't know if we want to open that up to levies in general, but I would amend my motion to say levies.
Elementary levies.
Okay, take out the general.
And just say.
General, okay.
Additional levies to operate and maintain.
Okay, so you've amended your motion.
I'll second.
Additional levies.
Jennifer seconded the amendment.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have an amended motion. Elementary trustees, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Next, the high school resolution.
The high school resolution for trustee and general levy as.
Thank you, Jack. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Will. Any further discussion? Micah? You looked like you wanted to say something, so.
Now would there be public comment?
And yes, now there would be public comment. Thank you.
I just basically wanted, what you talked about communication. How do politicians get elected? They hit the constituents day after day after day with advertisements. Lay out your case, like the politicians do. Lay out everything like he was talking about. Instead of saying, well, go look at this, lay it out in the media so that you got the opportunity to see it. I mean, it's going to be your biggest, my opinion.
Thank you. And you know, we did talk about this a lot in Finance Committee, and one of the things we did talk about is we have to get our message out, not, you know, a journalist message out. And I mean, anybody in here have a public relations degree or experience? I don't think so. It's worth it to start early and to get a good plan going, somebody who knows what they're doing. But that is part of the discussion that we will have in the future. But right now, we have to just make the decision to go forward with it, so.
I know these are always open, but could we just invite them to, like, the meeting where we talk and vote to do?
That would be part of it, in my opinion. The other part of it is, we are responsible for providing the necessary resources for the school district. And this is part of it. And we will have to make an effort to promote a levy if this is what we're choosing to do. And we have to be in this together, give the same message, a positive message. And like you're saying, we have to promote this. Any other discussion? Okay. Been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Motion passed. Let's see, we're all here, right? 10-1. Okay, consent agenda. The
I
routine,
move to accept the elementary consent agenda as presented.
thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Rebecca and Ursula. Any discussion? Any public comment on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all in favor, please say, elementary trustees, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. District-wide consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Lloyd. Is there a second? Thank you, Heather. It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Any public comment? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Next up, informational items and reports. Trustee report. Start at the far end. Lance?
I have no report.
Jennifer?
Hey guys, the Great Kindness Challenge is coming up January 23rd. Talk to those schools that you work with and just teach kindness in the school.
Nothing to report.
Well, I have the clock to pass along.
Ah, yes.
And I have chosen, Sue, I know you started the clock, but I'd like to pass this clock to you because of the time and energy you put towards the board and all of your other boards that you put all of this time and your heart and your energy into, and just, I appreciate that.
Thank you, Heather. Gyroscope, too.
That's funny, that's very funny.
I don't think he heard that, though.
So that can be.
It's still in play.
Thank you, that means a lot. Will?
Nothing to report.
Scott?
The only thing I have to report is, one of the decisions that we made at the beginning of the school year was to do, the financial reports like twice a year. And so at the finance committee, we talked, and either next meeting or the beginning of February, we'll do a financial report for everyone so that you can hear where we're at, and we'll be halfway through the year at that time, so. Give you an update on that?
Thanks, Scott. Ursula?
For our curriculum meeting coming up, we are going to have Kelly Higgins, who is the director of the IB program, presenting, and I just thought that worked really well with having Michelle Payne here talking about the IB program. When we were going through and looking at what, as the curriculum committee, we could address, it came up that IB has its own curriculum. It's the international curriculum. So it's not something that has typically been as much on our radar. So it's very exciting to see what she has to say and to get a presentation about it and kind of touch onto that curriculum. So if anybody is really interested in IB and you want to come sit into the meeting, that will be happening at the curriculum meeting.
Thank you, Ursula. Rebecca?
The MTSBA updates, the legislative updates are fascinating reading each morning. You have nothing else to do.
I like, you're saying it totally like genuinely, everybody laughs, but I believe you.
Don't you think?
It is, there's a lot going
There's a
on
lot
right
going
now,
on.
and
It's fun to read.
will be for quite some time, yeah. The only thing I have to report is, And this seems like it was such a long time ago, but it was the art show, the student art show, during the art walk in December. And it is really fun to see, I mean, the high school kids, in both the public and the private schools, and the elementary kids, to see all their artwork and to see the artists there. It's really pretty fun to see what they do and to see the skill that the students have. Administrative reports.
The financial audit for fiscal year 2022 is in full swing and keeping us very busy. We asked for, information 2 weeks ago, and we've been providing it to him. And then, based on that information, like check registers and trustees report and things like that, and he established a sample size, and then he gets into, you know, pulling invoices, and so we're just kind of slammed with, pulling information for the auditor, so we're keeping busy with that. And then tomorrow, I'm attending a meeting at the county election office with, my counterparts from Columbia Falls and Whitefish. And we're just trying to get a just kind of early start on the upcoming school elections, how they're going to run, what kind of manpower they'll have for verifying signatures and things like that. So all I have to report today.
Thank you, Denise.
I just want to let you know that, we resubmitted our advanced learning opportunities grant, like that last year, received about $175,000 from the state, that was between the elementary and high school. So at the, elementary side, what that's, designed for, it pays 60% out of pocket expenses, for parents. And so that was broke down. It was paid basically all the, tech ed, student course fees at Kalispell Middle School, also paid for their, some of their Project Lead the Way, and then partial salary as a Project Lead the Way instructor. And then on the high school side, it pays for up to 75% of students taking IB and AP exams, and then $200 to anybody that signed up for a running start or concurrent enrollment course. Right now, first semester, there was 219 students in a running start or concurrent enrollment, and we anticipate another 50. So we're going to be looking at that and cutting checks to parents, and it will be letters saying that they can use this to any cost that they incurred within the enrollment or running start. They can use it for that. And then we also use it for Project Lead the Way. That grant will continue. Legislature.
Thanks, Pete. Yeah.
Just two quick things. First, I want to highlight our teachers that transitioned so quickly to the remote day that we had right before the break. Due to the extreme cold weather, I thought that was a great call, and felt really good about that for especially our younger students and students that rely on transportation. And we had LROD collect some statistics, and they had a really high turnout. I think the lowest was around 50%, and the highest was around 90% of students that were online or completing their work on paper and getting it back to the teacher for that day. So I think that there's some public perceptions about that not being a real day, but the reality is I think our kids transition, our teachers transition really well to that online service. So just a big shout out to those teachers. And then this is the best time of the year. So Michelle presented it as like the dog days of winter. I think this is the best time of the year. This is the time where we get our teams together and really make progress on the goals that we set at the beginning of the year, but then also get together and determine what we're going to do next year. If you're going to start rolling things out next year, how you start piloting and getting it out. So we've been busy doing that.
No report.
Okay, next up is the Safe Return to Schools and Continuity of Service Plan.
And that was updated and approved back in December, and no changes.
Next up is public comment, and this is the time for comments on public matters that are not on the main agenda. Members of the audience are encouraged to briefly address the trustees on an issue not on the agenda. The chair of the board will seek comments from the audience on significant items as they occur. Public matters do not include any pending legal matters, private personnel issues, or private student issues. Please do not attempt to address such issues at this time or you will be ruled out of order. Please note that individuals will be given 3 minutes for public comment. Is there any public comment?
I am coming here, bouncing back and forth between what's going on over there in the auditorium, and was just thinking, you know, that they're in there with, like 3 nonprofits. The school donated the space, which is nice, I suppose, but, it does set a precedent, I guess, for any nonprofit to come in without prejudice. I hope when, you know, I might be bringing some nonprofits here to get free auditorium for the night, that'll be okay. I don't even think it went through board approval, so I guess I'll figure out what that process is. Anyway, you know, and if denied, I suppose that would be considered discriminatory. It's whoever was denied, you know, whatever nonprofit. So it might set kind of a dangerous precedent to be allowing that kind of thing. I don't know. Maybe something you want to think about. Your budget, I mean, obviously you've got a lot of new kids moving in here and you gotta figure out how to pay for them. So I had some suggestions that, if you could consider charging, you have to provide the basic education. And I was told this by Principal Payne back when my daughter was being denied, an education here, other than the basic education, not an equal education. She was exempt from wearing a mask and she couldn't be here. The online learning was the basic education. So that being said, you only need to provide the basic education, and all these extras, like the shop classes and things like that, should come with a significant fee. Perhaps enough to pay for the instructor for that course and all the materials, especially sports. My kids went to Stillwater for a number of years. It was $250 to do the sport. And then you also had to pay, when you went on a long bus ride, you had to pay additional to cover the cost of transportation. So I think that your academic, or your sports fees need to be much higher. Because when my son played soccer here, I think it was like $35. And he got so much stuff. I mean, he got a shirt and a workout jersey and a bag, and like, it cost the school more than $35. So if you're looking for ways to, you know, your bathtub has so much water in it, and you gotta figure out all these holes where the water's leaking out. And those are some places where perhaps you could make some changes that would be legal, because you'd still be providing the basic education. And then, obviously, there's gonna be students that wanna take these courses that can't afford it. So hopefully the foundation can come in and give scholarships to those students. However, if those students don't, do a good job, or like messing around or whatever, their scholarship could be at risk for being lost, and given to a student that actually will care about that course or take. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Any other public comment? Okay, next, upcoming meetings and events. Please make notice of your committee meetings and our work session in 2 weeks.
And the curriculum meeting is not gonna be in the assistant superintendent's office.
What is it gonna be?
It's gonna be, here, was it the Flathead High School conference room?
Main office conference room.
Like the room right when you first walk in. So that,
Thank you. anything else that's not, any updating on here?
Free parking, staff parking.
Are we staff?
I
Okay,
I don't know what day we're on, or what level, you know, on the street, so
okay. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
There's a second.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed. Meeting is adjourned. Will and Ursula?